Within the annals of inexplicable deaths, there are only a handful of examples that are as puzzling and heartbreaking as the case of the 8-day bride. This case, which involves the unexpected and untimely death of a newlywed bride just 8 days after her wedding, has captivated the imagination of many people due to the mysterious circumstances surrounding the case and the issues it raises about love, betrayal, and justice. The events of the story take place against the backdrop of a romance that appeared to be perfect but degenerated into a nightmare for the protagonist. This video digs into the specifics of the 8-day bride, examining the sequence of events that led up to her passing, the inquiry that followed, and the lingering mystery that continues to captivate people. The body of Christina Kettlewell, who was 22 years old at the time, was found on the banks of a river near Severn Falls, Ontario, on the evening of May 20th. 1947, the cottage that she had leased for her honeymoon was located 150 feet away from the location where the body was found. The water level was only 9 inches below the surface. Christina Mokum was a good worker at the bank where she worked, and she now resided in Mimico, which is located in the province of Ontario. A capable worker was the description that was given to her. John Ray Kettlewell, a war veteran who was 26 years old and better known as Jack, and Christina eloped on May 12, 1947. They had known each other for 3 years prior to their marriage. Within Christina's family, there was worry surrounding the potential marriage. Jack was the best of friends with Ronald Barrie, a professional ballroom dancer who was 28 years old and was born in Italy. Ronald Barrie was a professional ballroom dancer. To put it simply, Ronald Barrie was an immigrant. According to a number of sources, Jack, Christina, and Ronald are said to have spent an excessive amount of attention and time together. Helen, who is Christina's sister, would make the observation that the idea that Ronald being romantically involved with Christina was something that the family considered to be a possibility. The Kettlewells relocated to an apartment on Tyndall Avenue in Toronto not long after the elopement, and they remained there for the majority of the days that followed. We were taken aback when Ronald remained by their side throughout the entirety of their honeymoon. Furthermore, on May 17th, the three persons set off on a journey to Ronald's lonely cabin in Severn Falls, which could only be reached by boat. This isolated cottage was located in the middle of the forest. It is reported that Christina began acting in a manner that was not typical of her during the time that they spent at the cottage. This would be a departure from her usual behavior. At other times, she would burst into tears, but overall, she gave off the impression that she was completely perplexed. It appears that Christina and Ronald had conversations about whether or not Jack genuinely loved her. This conclusion is based on the data. It was a strange coincidence that Christina vanished from the cottage on May 20th, which was also the day that Ronald's cottage mysteriously caught fire. Christina's disappearance occurred on the same day. Jack was sat inside the cabin with what appeared to be a head injury, and Ronald noticed him when he had returned to the cabin. Subsequently, he utilized his own strength to rescue Jack from the flames. Despite his best efforts, he was unable to find Christina anywhere within the cottage. He looked extensively for her. During the course of just 1 hour, Ronald was able to recall that the cottage had been completely annihilated by fire. Jack was taken on a boat to Severn Falls by him at the same time that he was making contact with the authorities. The goal was to get Jack to a car that would transport him to the hospital. On that very instant, Ronald became conscious of the fact that the situation had become considerably more dire than it had been before. That evening, Neville Sweet, who owned a boathouse in the area, found Christina's body in 9 inches of water around 150 feet distant from the cabin. Nicholas Sweet came across the body. It was discovered that Christina's body was within the water. On her body, there were no signs of violence, including burns, and there were no other indications of violence. However, the official cause of death was declared to be drowning, despite the fact that she was found to have trace levels of codeine in her stomach during the official autopsy. It is interesting to note that Major Lawrence Scarterfield, who attempted to assist in extinguishing the fire in the cottage, stated that he did not find any indications of Christina's body in the vicinity when he went to retrieve water from the river only a few hours earlier in order to assist with the flames. This is something that should be taken into consideration. Within the scope of the inquiry, the police questioned a total of 20 individuals, including Jack and Ronald, among other people. Jack was questioned by the police for a period of 3 hours immediately following his discharge from the hospital. where he had been treated for burns, shock, a head injury, and what appeared to be drugging. When Jack was released from the hospital, he was questioned by the police. On the other side, Jack stated that he did not remember anything that occurred after 11 o'clock on the day that Christina passed away. He claimed that he had no knowledge of anything that occurred after that time. The police interrogated Ronald for a grueling 13 hours, during which time he made a statement that was 3,000 words lengthy and that the police would describe as fantastic. Ronald's testimony was a testament to his incredible intelligence. The 19th of June was the day that the investigation into Christina's death was meant to begin, but it quickly became an event that was both memorable and exciting when it really began. A significant number of members of the general public were present outside of the courtroom, and some of them even went so far as to approach Jack and Ronald, the two most important witnesses, in order to collect their autographs. Additionally, there were a lot of people on the grounds. One thing that ought to be highlighted, however, is the fact that Jack and Ronald were not being tried for murder at the time of the incident. It was purely for the purpose of determining whether or not Christina's death was the result of any kind of criminal misbehavior that the investigation was carried out. Due to the fact that the post-mortem examination disclosed codeine in the stomach of the deceased, and due to the suspicious fact that she was found drowned, this jury is unable to decide on the evidence given whether or not foul means were employed in her death, in accordance with the conclusions reached by the inquest jury. Although the highly sensationalized investigation uncovered a great deal of interesting information, the jury was ultimately unable to reach a decision that was accepted by the majority of its members regarding the question of whether or not Christina's death was the result of any kind of criminal activity. This was the case despite the fact that, because there was no proof that could be utilized to link either Jack or Ronald to the disaster, they were both exonerated of any culpability that they might have been responsible for. On account of this, they were no longer held responsible for the conduct that they had taken. Having said that, throughout the course of the procedure, their relationships with Christina as well as with one other were brought to light in a comprehensive manner. There were indicators and proof that Christina was going through a great deal of agony as a result of the unnatural conduct of her husband and Barrie, as indicated in the contents of the investigation that was carried out by the law's enforcement officials. If you found the mystery of Christina Kettlewell's tragic death as intriguing as we did, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell for more deep dives into unsolved cases and enigmatic stories. Stay tuned for more gripping content that explores the darkest corners of true crime.